In Speaker's Corner today, and we're speaking here with David Shayler. David, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm the former MI5 officer who came to prominence 13 years ago when I blew the whistle on MI6 funding our terrorist enemies in Al-Qaeda. And for that, I've been put in prison twice. They've tried to kill me on 9 occasions. And as a result of that, I've gone through a spiritual awakening.
Okay, and when you say spiritual awakening, what do you mean by this?
Well, what happens in 2005, I went through what would be called a conventional spiritual awakening. I began to believe in living in love, that there was a higher power guiding me, and that if I listened to that higher power, my life would be better. And I've got to say, in my own experience of life, that's happened. I look much better than I used to. I was massively overweight. I look very old for my age at one point because of all the stress they put me through. But now I'm not overweight, I'm healthy, and that's partly to do with the love of God.
Very good. And does this higher power, do you have a name, or is it a form of religion, or is it just something spiritual?
It's spiritual. The religion is a set of laws, but then again so is democracy. Yeah. And laws are all about taking away your power because you're effectively letting other people make moral decisions for you. What I'm talking about is the journey of love, basically. And God is love, and when you connect to that love, you connect to the power of the universe.
And have you since fallen in love with a woman or anything like that, or is it a kind of a personal, is it more just love with your spiritual God?
Well, I was going out with a woman for 13 years, and as a result of my spiritual awakening, that relationship ended because suddenly my first love was God and not her. And in all relationships, that is the problem, is that you may be tempted to be derailed from the path because of the pressure from other human beings, but God says, no, listen to me. If you listen to me, follow my path, you will truly see enlightenment.
And do you spend time excuse the word, but evangelizing?
I do. I talk about the new mission. Now, to be clear about my spiritual awakening, God came to me in 2007 and showed me that I was Jesus Christ. Now, that will obviously cause a lot of consternation amongst people, but I assure you, Jesus Christ did not come 2,000 years ago. 4 books of prophecy were released to mankind, and they're known as the Gospels. This is why they're inconsistent. They can't be historical records, they're too inconsistent. And if you look at biblical texts, certain biblical texts, they will show you that the Messiah is called David M. Shayler. I am David M. Shayler.
Seriously, and what texts are they?
It's on the Rod of Aaron in anagram form. It's at the centre of the 72 names of God. It's in the initial letters of the 12 tribes of Israel. It's in a passage in the Talmud, and it's in various other things, like, for example, the Shugbra monument, which is said to point to the location of the Holy Grail. There you get D.M. Shayler, 777, and my awakening happened in the run to the 7th of July 2007.
And so how did this hit you? Because that's quite a revelation to deal with. Revelation, sorry. As a human, that's quite a lot to take.
It is, yeah. Obviously, it was a bigger surprise to me as anybody. As an atheist, I was claimed to be the biggest atheist in the universe, basically, up until the age of 39. I then went through a conventional spiritual awakening, in which I thought the Christ consciousness was just a consciousness up there. I didn't believe that the gods incarnated as men. However, it's only modern Western culture that has the view that God incarnated as a man once 2,000 years ago, and that's it. Just about every other culture says that the gods incarnate as men, even the Greco-Roman myths, all the Eastern myths and so on. If you put together the philosophy of the West, that we have Jesus, the philosophy of the East, reincarnation, you finish up with the reincarnating Jesus. So my past lives were people like Che Guevara, Lawrence of Arabia, Benjamin Franklin, Mark Antony, Pythagoras, Plato, and of course the Old Testament prophets.
So some of those you've mentioned there seem to me that would have overcrossed Lawrence of Arabia and Che Guevara. So how does that work out?
It appears that it takes about 7 years for a soul to properly connect to a body, basically. So there can be an overlap period. There's an overlap of 2 years between me and Che Guevara. Yeah. But I do a point that I'm born out in 65, and that's when everything starts going wrong for Che Guevara. He goes into Bolivia.
Things went along.
Yeah, and it all went wrong compared to when he was being backed by God in 1957, and he overthrew the Cuban regime on a wing and a prayer, basically.
So I'd like to get back maybe and talk more about some of the MI5 stuff that you went through. You said that was quite a stressful time. If we get if you'd just like to, I think I remember reading a long time ago about, was it an attempt on Gaddafi's life in Libya? Was that related to yourself?
Yeah, that was funded by MI6, and they actually funded associates of Osama bin Laden in Libya to carry this out. Okay. And they wanted to install an Al-Qaeda regime in Libya that was loyal to MI6, basically. Now, by this point, Gaddafi was no longer funding terrorism.
Not a threat to the West.
What?
He wasn't a threat to the West.
No, he'd given it up by this point. He'd given up violence, so we were giving money to people who posed a direct threat to British lives to bump off somebody who didn't pose a threat. So it makes absolutely no sense. Now,
what do you think what is the motive behind that? Is it oil?
It was to do with the Libyan oil industry, also to do with building bases in North Africa, a key strategic military point. And of course this is what happened in Iraq afterwards, as they deposed Saddam and have done the similar sort of thing in Afghanistan basically.
Yeah. And what happened to you once you released this information into the public?
Well, I was basically demonised by the media. Yeah. They tried to kill me on 9 occasions. In fact, as an atheist, I used to joke. I used to say, someone up there likes me, because I kept surviving attacks, basically.
So when you say kill, with the media or the actual the state force?
Well, we're trying to kill me, yeah. 2 months after Diana died in a black Ritz Mercedes, I was heading to see Mohammed Al-Fayed's security people in Paris. The driver fell asleep at the wheel and hit the central reservation. Now, there's suspicion in the Diana death that Henri Paul, the driver, had been drugged with carbon monoxide, so it seemed to be a similar modus operandi. Fortunately, when he hit the central reservation, he jolted him awake, and then he wound the window of the car down, so he was breathing fresh air. That was only the first one. There have been other ones where I was driving along the outside lane of the M25, a white unmarked van came up on the inside of me, blew my rear passenger tyre out. Car could have quite easily gone into the central reservation, but say if God's on your side, you will be protected.
And did you ever report these crimes, or what was the effect of such reports?
Well, obviously I thought if I go to the police, they're going to think I'm mad. But it got to a point where they've made several attempts, and I thought, well, what I'm going to do is register with the police. I'm going to say to the police, this is happening to me. I know there's not a lot you can do about it, but I want you to know that in case they do have a successful attempt on me and I am killed, basically.
It's pretty crazy to have all these attempts. I'm kind of smiling now, but just it's so mad.
Yeah, well, I laugh at it now, of course, yeah, and I'm protected by God. But when you're an atheist and you believe that you're going to die and that's the end of your consciousness forever, that is the most scary thing you can ever face. And obviously that started to affect my health. I got acid reflux, I couldn't sleep at night, had all sorts of problems. But that's the moment when God comes to you. You won't necessarily know it's God, but something will come to you, and either you carry on going mad or you choose the way.
Well, this is Alex here, actually also suffers from acid reflux. So I was wondering, what did you take for the acid reflux?
It's actually a physical thing. It's to do with your posture.
Yeah.
And that's what you've got to do. You've got to change your posture. And what happened to me was I corrected a thing in my neck. I was just sitting there one night in front of the computer. My neck was aching. I just went out of my neck, and it joined my thing back up again. And that was when I started to get healthy again.
So if you could take a look at Alex here now and look at his posture, what would you think? Maybe I could punch him in the neck or something like that to maybe sort him out?
What he's got to do is get on his back and start rolling his legs over his head, basically.
It's very hard to stop him doing that at the best of times.
Yeah, no, you've got to do that, and you've got to do it in different positions. You've got to do the crab as well, and this will start to realign your spine. And in fact, this is how you get rid of your beer gut. Your beer gut's to do with the muscles in your back. So if you strengthen and stretch the muscles in your back, you start to look thinner, you stand taller, and so on.
So what else, apart from the Libyan episode, were you involved, or did you leak to the press? Was that the main thing?
And that was the main reason why I blew the whistle, but I also blew the whistle on MI5 having information and failing to react to it and allowing terrorist attacks to happen.
Which ones in particular?
The 1994 Israeli embassy bombing in London, but also the Bishopsgate bombing, which was the most expensive terrorist attack on the British mainland.
So this is the IRA bomb in Bishopsgate?
Yeah, exactly. I worked against the IRA for 2 years. I have no problem working against the IRA. I've always been opposed to violence, and working for MI5 and putting away men of terror was to me good spiritual work, even though I wasn't spiritual at the time. I mean, as an atheist, I believe it was more incumbent upon mankind to create justice if there's no God.
So when it comes to terrorism, do you see terrorism as a strategy? So how, some people see, when they see, say in Northern Ireland, and they see people that don't have much ability to combat one of the world's greatest military forces, and it seems to be sometimes to me as a strategy. How do you combat